It is always beneficial to begin a new year with self-repositioning. This is necessary in order to ensure that we maximize the benefit that comes with that new year. And this self-repositioning entails self-evaluation, self-equipment, and self-reengineering. If your experience last year was not good, it does not necessarily mean that you should have the same experience this year. With little repositioning of yourself, that is, repositioning in the area of your habit, changing from one bad habit to a better one, repositioning in the area of your activities, repositioning in the area of your perspectives of life. I believe that repositioning in these areas and more can make your experience in the current year a better one. A wise man once said, if your habits don't change, you won't have a new year, you will just have another year. That also reminds me the famous quote that's often attributed to Albert Einstein, which says, and I quote, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." My prayer for all of us this year is that this year will be for us a different one. It will be a different year with better results, a different year with better experiences, better harvest, and a more fulfilling outcome. Welcome to Family Matters Roundtable. And in this edition of the Family Matters Roundtable, we'll be talking about the power to say no. The power to say no. I believe that one of the areas we need to build strength is in the ability to say no to the things that are not needful in our lives. Things that have no bearing to our visions, things that have no bearing to our purposes and pursuits. I believe that if we sincerely review our activities and involvement last year, and even in the previous years, we'll observe that there are things we allowed into our life that we shouldn't have allowed. For instance, there may have been relationship we kept that we have no business keeping. There may have been business involvement that were not necessary. There may have been associations that were not needful. There may have been contracts entered into that ought not to be, amongst others. What I'm saying here is that there are things we said yes to in the past that we shouldn't have said yes to, that we actually should have said no to. And some of these things may have adverse impacts to our outcomes. May God not allow us to repeat the same mistakes again this year. Now, we need to know how to say no when it matters. We need to develop the inner strength to say no to the things that are not needful. Saying no to things that are not needful to us can be a valuable resource. There are times you have to be different if you must accomplish your goal and objectives. The 5 wise virgins in the Bible said no to their 5 foolish counterparts when the foolish ones wanted them to part with their reserved oil. They refused to oblige them, and at the end of the day, it was the wise ones who met the group's objective. Remember that the group's objective was to meet and receive the bridegroom. Those wise virgins may have been called names and jeered at for refusing to give away their reserved oil. Those reserved oil represent their strength. Oil in that story is symbolic of strength. So you need to consistently say no to those that want you to give away your strength. Your strength here could imply your integrity, sincerity, your virginity, your personality, your righteousness, and so on. Similarly, in another Bible story, Samson was the strongest man of his time, but he failed to say no to Delilah and her seductive schemes. You know the end of the story. Samson did not only lose his vision, he lost his life. So, in this edition of the Family Matters Roundtable, we will explore 3 ways to build courage for saying no. 3 ways to build courage for saying no against ungodly norms, against circumstances that contradict our values, even when every other person around us is saying yes in conformity. Now let's look at it. Number 1, set your boundaries. Set your boundaries. If you don't have boundaries in your life, everything will seem good in your eyes. We all have areas we are vulnerable. We all have areas we are strong. We all have limits beyond which safety is not guaranteed. We all have things we are capable of doing and things we are not capable of doing. In the Nigerian parlance, it is often said, "No do pass yourself." Therefore, my friend, it is wisdom to know yourself and never try to be other people, especially when they are not on the same trajectory of life with you. Setting boundaries means to keep away from those things and people who, instead of make you stronger, reinforce your weakness and vulnerabilities. Setting boundaries starts from knowing who you are and then defining your purpose here on earth. Such knowledge helps you develop healthy values and principles regarding the things you do, the places you go to, how you dress, who can be your friend or not, and so on. Listen to me, friend. Everybody can be your associate, but not everyone can be your friend. Your destiny and purpose determine who is qualified to be your friend. You cannot be heading to Lagos and you join the same vehicle with those heading to Kaduna. Setting boundaries means telling yourself early in the journey that you are heading to Lagos and not Kaduna, and then avoiding everything and everyone that has no bearing to that predetermined destination of yours. Number 2, assert your boundaries. Assert your boundaries. It makes no sense setting boundary when you can't enforce it. To assert your boundaries means to enforce your boundaries. Boundary assertion starts with contentment and self-confidence. Be content in who you are and who you are working to become. Have confidence in yourself even if you are materially poor at the moment. Realize that the worst form of poverty is not material poverty, but mental poverty. So, to assert your boundary is to insist on keeping the boundaries you have set for yourself. Boundary assertion becomes more effective when you let those around you be aware that you have boundaries which you are not ready to allow anyone violate. In a relationship, for instance, let them know your boundaries regarding sex and other related issues. In business, for instance, let them know your boundary. In ministry, let them know your boundary, and so on. Number 3, challenge any violations to your set boundaries. There will always be people and circumstances wanting to violate your boundaries. Not everyone will be happy and comfortable with you when you say no to the things they have already accepted and said yes to. In fact, they will think you are insane and will try to persuade you otherwise. It is your duty to stand your ground. To effectively challenge violations, you have to form a habit of openly professing and practicing your boundaries. When you are in the midst of friends or colleagues and they veer into unedifying conversations or practices, find a way to leave. When you are in a relationship and your partner wants you to violate your boundary, find a way to depart from that relationship immediately. If you openly profess and practice what you believe, those who don't believe in what you believe will simply avoid you. People will break away from you willingly when they realize you are different and you are content with yourself. In conclusion, my friend, today, remember that your first step in building your courage to say no is to establish your boundaries. Then you have to be ready to assert those boundaries anytime and anywhere. And then resist every attempt to have your boundaries violated. When you do this, you will not only preserve your sanctity, you will reduce stress, build self-confidence, and maintain a stable mental health for yourself. Thank you for listening. God bless you real good.